This is a step-by-step instruction of how to set up the OmegaDev development environment on Windows. This will make it possible for you to use Visual Studio Code to develop and debug C, C++, and assembly code for the Atari ST. In this guide, we will use the Steam emulator as a target machine. To be able to do that, we need to build a toolchain using a Linux environment called MSys2. So click on that link, click on Download, and when that is done, click on the file to install. In the installer, just use the defaults and click Next. When it is done, make sure that the checkbox is on, then click Finish to start the MSys2 environment. We now go back to the wiki page, and it says that we should have UCRT64 environment open, and we can check that. It is. Good. And we should go to the directory that we want OmegaDev in. Now, I have prepared such a directory. I call it test. It's in my C root. To go to that directory in the MSys2 environment, you need to first write cd c:, enter. That will get you to the C root. Then write cd test, and that will get you to the test folder. The next step is to execute a couple of commands in the UCRT64 environment. The easiest way to do that is to simply cut and paste them from the wiki page and into the environment. So I do this by first selecting it with the mouse, then copy, and in the UCRT64 environment, I press Shift Insert. And enter. Just accept the defaults. And then we can just wait. And we're done. So let's execute the next line. Select it, copy, Shift Insert, and enter. This will download the Git repository. Okay, so now we got the repository downloaded. So we execute the next line, we copy it, Shift Insert, and enter. So now we are positioned in the toolchain directory. We execute the last command to build the toolchain, which will download and build everything needed. This will take roughly around 1 hour on this computer. So I will cut here and continue when it's done. Okay, the build finished without errors. And that means that we now have a complete GCC toolchain with all the compilers, linkers, debuggers, and libraries that you're used to find there. And you can find it in the Windows path that I highlight here. And this also means that we are done using the Linux environment, so you can close it down now if you want to. The next thing to do is to install virtual COM ports. We need those to connect the debugger running in Visual Studio Code to the debugger server running on an Atari ST emulated by Steam. So click on a link to com0com, click download, and click to open the zip archive, and choose the file that is named x64, and well, follow the instructions that Windows thinks that is best for you. x64 again. And in the installer, just go by default and click next. When the installer is done, check Launch Setup and then Finish. Let's move that window aside and close down some unnecessary windows we have left. And back to the wiki, we can see that we should make sure that we have virtual port pair between two COM ports. And yep, we have between COM4 and COM5, so that is okay. Next up, we need to install Steam, so click on a link, click download, open the zip archive, and let's copy Steam to our test folder so we keep everything in one place. That done, we close the zip archive and go back to the wiki page to read what the next instruction is. And it says here that we should select a TOS image for Steam to work with. And I just so happen to have one downloaded already. And I will just copy it to the test folder too. Next up, we need to select a folder for Steam to use as a SD hard drive. I will, again, in the test folder, create a folder and just call it SDHD. Okay, for the next part we need to start Steam. And of course, Windows complains, but we can get past it. I'm sorry about the Swedish, guys, but hey, that's my system. And, well, just click yes, okay. And select the TOS image we copied. And, well, don't really care about that, just I don't care about it anyway. And I don't want that either. Okay. Now, in Steam, open the disk manager, click GemDOS, click Add, and browse to the SDHD folder that we created earlier. After you've done that, make sure that you enable the GemDOS hard drive. And click OK. Let's close the disk manager. And I realize that what I've just done isn't exactly what's stated on the wiki, so I will need to update that later. But now we can follow the wiki, and we can see that we need to go to Setup, I/O ports, and choose COM port. Just click OK. And select one of the COM ports that we have from com0com. We need the first one. Having done that, we need to copy gdb-srv.ttp. And that's from the toolchain we built. So we need to go to that Windows folder. And I will fast forward here as I'm horribly slow at clicking my way to that path. Having found that file, we need to copy it to the STHD folder we created for our SD hard drive. Having done that means that we are finished with our preparing of Steam, so we can continue with Visual Studio Code. So, click on the link, select the Windows installer, wait for it to download, and run the installer, and just go for the defaults, accept everything. Yep, that's it. Just click finish. And here we have it. But we're not done yet. We also need to install a few extensions. So we go back to the wiki and click on the first link, click install, and yeah, we accept to open Visual Studio Code. And here we can click install again. And now that extension is done, so let's go back to the wiki and click on the next link and do the same there. Great! Visual Studio Code is now installed, and checking the wiki says that we can close it down. So let's do that. So by having everything installed means that you're now able to use it. Everything we've done up till now is a one-time thing. You don't need to do it again. So to test this out, let's open up one of the example projects provided in the OmegaDev repository. You can find it in OmegaDev examples dots. In that directory is a file called msys2 vscode.bat. You need to edit that file to reflect settings that are specific to your system. And according to the wiki, the first thing we need to edit is STHD path. That should point to where we have our SD hard drive on Steam. So let's simply copy that path and put it into the batch file. Going back to the wiki, we can see that we need to set GDB COM port, and that should be the second COM port that we got from COM0COM, and that is COM5 in this case. So we set it to COM5 and save the file. And now we're ready to start developing. To do that, we need to start Steam, and in Steam we need to start gdb srv.ttp using the correct arguments. And the correct arguments to use in this case is minus minus multi space dots.prg. Dots.prg is the program that we want to debug even though it doesn't exist yet. And the multi flag means that the debug server will not exit after we have finished debugging, but wait for a new session to start again. Having started the debug server, we can now start Visual Studio Code. And we should do that by using the batch file we prepared earlier. So let's go to the folder where the example code is and double-click on that batch file. Starting Visual Studio Code through this batch file will make your system-specific settings available to Visual Studio Code. And this is the point where you choose to trust me or not, and I choose trust me. And everything started up. So we have the source code. Can click on the main file, for instance, scroll through it. And we can build the project by going to Terminal, run build task, and it builds. And well, Visual Studio Code now recommended me to install an extension pack, and I usually just accept it. So looking at the output, we can see that the dots.prg file is actually built, and let's run it. So we start debugging. Now the response time here is a bit slow. Running this on Linux is much faster, and I don't really know why, but at the moment things are what they are. So let's just wait and see what happens. Okay, we have a connection, and if we wait a little bit more, great, it has stopped at the main function. If we switch over to Steam, we can see that the server is just waiting for us to send a command, which we will do by clicking continue. And now in Steam, we can see our dots. Going back to Visual Studio Code, we can choose a pause, and we have a break at assembler code. And if we look at the main function, we can put a breakpoint somewhere in main and continue. The response is, like I said, a little bit slow. And here we have the break. We can now examine like local variables or registers. The register list contains floating point registers, which the current selected CPU doesn't have, so this is a bug I need to fix. And we can remove the breakpoint and click continue. And our dots is running again. Well, this is pretty much all I have for you today. Thank you.